Your music career will fail without this. Today we're gonna look at 7 things I wish I knew when I first started playing guitar. The first thing, and one of the most important, is always tuning your guitar before you either play or perform. Now you're probably wondering, what does it matter if I'm slightly out of tune? It gives you a better overall sound as a musician. And when you start to learn the tones and relative pitch and how the pitches interact with each other, it's extremely important that your guitar is in tune, especially if you're trying to learn by ear. And one of the most important parts of developing your ear is making sure that your notes match the notes that are on recordings. The only way you can do that is always being in tune. And one of the things about today's music is everything is extremely digitized because of auto-tune and applications like that, where everything, even classical music, is pitch corrected. So one of the best ways you can combat that is always being in tune, because if you're not, it's really going to stand out compared to today's music that's being released across all genres. Now the last reason, which is one of the most important, is live performance. If you don't tune when you practice, you're probably not going to tune when you play. And it sounds very unprofessional if your instrument's out of tune. That is the #1 way to sound like an amateur or like you don't know what you're doing, is if your instrument guitars are out of tune with each other. You can really do a lot to sound professional by just being in tune. Number 2, metronome. A metronome will really help you with good timing and technique. Also, it'll make you play faster a lot better. And one of the things that people don't really realize is it helps with your playing slow. Playing slow is actually really difficult. If you've ever tried it and actually playing with the metronome very slowly, it is hard. So one of the tips that I would give that really helped me a ton and get to be a lot better guitar player is practicing with your metronome on 2 and 4 for rock and jazz style licks, and practicing with your metronome on 1 for classical style things. And eventually with jazz, you want to take away beat 2 and just play on beat 4 to really strengthen your sense of rhythm. This is going to help you play with other musicians a lot better because you're going to have such better time and you won't be drifting off away from the band. Number 3 thing I wish I knew, learning to use a DAW, or in other words, a digital audio workstation. As you can see here, this is the one that I use, Logic Pro X. In my opinion, it's the best one. I know that a lot of other people have different opinions on what works for them, but I would highly recommend using Logic Pro because you can start with GarageBand, which is a great introduction to that. And if you want to hear more about Logic Pro and digital audio workstations, please let me know in the comments and I will start developing some educational videos for those as well. One of the most important reasons to understand how to use a DAW, even if you're in classical or another style of music, is the way you present your music to the world through social media. Now today, we are sharing our music constantly on social media, and one of the things that separates people who get a lot of opportunities and people who don't is the quality of their sound. And the best way to edit your sound is in a digital audio workstation. Just because you have a DAW doesn't mean you're making trap, hip hop, or electronic music, or house music. It's used for everything today, from country to rock to rap to classical. All of them are recorded in a digital audio workstation. Also, if you were to go work in a studio, you would be using a lot of the materials that are inside a digital audio workstation. For example, an EQ or a compressor. Those are all things that will be found in studios and operate the same way that they do, or very similar, as a digital audio workstation. Also, they can be used for skills outside of music. For example, making this video. Right now I'm speaking into a microphone, going into my digital audio workstation, and then I will edit the sound and I can edit out any bad sounds or frequencies that happen to be in the room at the time that I make this. For example, the L train, I live in Chicago, the L is extremely noisy and I can edit out the frequencies of the train in my videos. Number 4, this is to play music by ear and reading it. There's a huge debate out there and I hear people say all the time, oh, I'm only an by ear player, or oh, I only read sheet music. No, you have to do them both. Think about it like language. If you only knew how to speak a language, but you didn't know how to write or read, that would make things very difficult. Vice versa, if you knew how to read and write, but you did not know how to speak, it would make day-to-day life very difficult for you. Think about it in terms like that of music. It's not either or, it's and. I would recommend reading Bach and Charlie Parker. I would recommend the Bach violin sonatas because those are very linear. There's not too many different rhythms besides 16th notes on the Bach. And I would recommend playing it up and down the guitar on the neck and trying it in different positions. The next example I would give is the Charlie Parker Omnibook. This is a great tool because it has a very diverse selection of rhythms from 8th notes, 8th rest, 16th notes, 16 triplets, any combination of permutation, it's there in the Omnibook. So those two I would recommend for getting a good feel on reading. And as far as playing by ear, I would highly recommend Miles Davis. They're not that hard and it's a great way to start by developing jazz vocabulary or vocabulary that can fit anywhere. And Sonny Rollins. Another one of my favorites is Wes Montgomery. Great for transcribing and great vocabulary that can be played in the blues, rock, metal, jazz, everything, fusion, whatever you want. Number 5. This is something I wish I had done a long time ago and started listening to a new album every single day. It's one of the best ways to inspire yourself and push your creative boundaries. One of the reasons we get into roadblocks with writing is we're constantly listening to the same things all the time. If you're listening to something new every day, you're gonna get new ideas, check out new things, learn new songs, be inspired, have new ideas and ways to approach writing. I would highly recommend trying to vary up your genre. So if you listen to jazz one day, try classical the next. If you try classical, try a rock album or an alt album or a punk album or a hip hop album. Make sure to constantly try new styles. This will get you out of your creative roadblocks and onto writing better and more interesting material. Music books or etude books are great ways to develop your playing and become a better player, better writer, everything. Some of the most helpful books I will recommend: a book on classical guitar by Christopher Parkney. There's books 1 and 2, and I highly recommend them both. If you know nothing about classical guitar, this will give you a great understanding in how to read and correctly perform classical guitar, and it's a great introduction. Obviously, after the book, you can go learn some more complex pieces, and it's a great foundation to start with classical guitar. The next book I'm going to recommend is Creative Jazz Improvisation by Scott Reeves. This is a great look at how to improvise in jazz, how to listen to jazz, and how to interact with it and become a better improviser. It's really made me a lot more proficient at my instrument as well. No matter what your genre, I think every guitar player should understand jazz and classical because it's really the only way to build great technique and fundamental skills. As far as beginners out there, I would recommend Hal Leonard Guitar Complete Edition and going through the entire book. If you finish that book, you will have a good basis of playing guitar competently, and if you do it with a metronome, I promise you'll be at the level where you could be out gigging and making some good money. There are many great books out there, from jazz to classical to rock to anywhere, but I would recommend reading one because it'll push you to learn new things and be a better musician. Number 7, the last thing I wish that I knew. Learning from a teacher. Learning from a teacher keeps you motivated and it keeps you on track. Because of course, a lot of people, we're human, we get off course, we look at things that are kind of sometimes a waste of time, and a teacher can help keep us focused. Because at least once a week, someone is checking in on your playing. And that way you get personalized feedback instantaneously. Someone there to help correct your mistakes on the spot. Also, it's very personalized. I have nothing against online courses. I've taken a bunch and I've learned it. Also, when you're studying with a teacher, you get instantaneous feedback in being in the same room. I hope these 7 tips have helped you. These are certainly things I wish I knew when I started playing guitar about 20 years ago, let alone even 10 years ago. I think they would have made a huge difference in my playing, and so hopefully you can take these ideas. As always, thanks for watching, and let me know down in the comments what more you want to hear.